because you are coming through loud and clear. Yeah, can you hear us okay? And can we hear you?
I can actually hear you much better than you can me.
Okay, excellent. Well, yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. You sound great, and yeah. So Lindsay was just filling us in on some of the things that she's been seeing at a high level at Cloud Native Security Day. A lot about SBOMs, a lot about vulnerabilities, some stuff about eBPF, which I know you've worked on a bunch. What have been some of the trends you've been hearing about at Cloud Native Security Day as you've been there?
Um, this is the first one for me and for a lot of people as a separate event. Um, like if you go back a few years back, security wasn't really a part of these developer conferences and the cloud native conferences. Let's take KubeCon 2016. It was right here in Seattle. Yeah, there wasn't much about security. And eventually it evolved into a few security related talks, and later on it became a day zero event, and now it is its own conference. And if you look at the size of this conference, it actually, in some ways, it looks as big, or in some cases, even bigger than KubeCon 2016.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so, so I'm pretty sure it's going to grow. There's a lot of talks on a lot of different topics: defense, offense, runtime security,
Mhm.
um, and then application security, and a lot about container image security. So
Mhm.
this is one of the emerging things that's getting more attention, especially with the focus on the supply chain problems. It started a couple of years ago, and it's just gaining more traction, more visibility, and more interest. We're not there in terms of having this fully figured out because there's
Mhm.
more buzz than value yet. Everybody is interested, but
Mhm.
you're not getting the value out of it, or you're discovering the gotchas around a lot of the tooling and solutions that things don't necessarily work as you expect, and there are a lot of compatibility problems. So it's all good, but at least there's enough attention on it to discover those problems.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the you're alluding to one of the trends we've been seeing just across the industry is this sort of notion of CVE noise, right? Where we have a lot of awareness around CVEs and the types of vulnerabilities that are in your containers, but developers are kind of being drowned out or being drowned by so much information and so many vulnerability reports and so many different scanners and all of this kind of stuff. Have you heard that going on at the conference as well? Has that been a theme?
So there's a little bit of that, like too much information. Vulnerability scanners is not a new construct. It's getting a new life in the cloud native space, and trying to apply a lot of the existing tools and a set of new tools in this domain. And uh, people discover all those gotchas where the information isn't always accurate, the vulnerability
Mhm.
information. You have a lot of false positives, false negatives,
Mhm.
uh, gaps in terms of coverage, inaccurate information in terms of classification and all of that. So
Mhm.
we're discovering that there's a lot of information, a lot of noise, and not all of that information is good,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's not even complete. So that's an interesting space, and there are a number of others related spaces. Again, related to noise and vulnerabilities, one of the new trends this year is this concept of VEX
Mhm.
vulnerability exchange format, where you have a way to provide additional context about the vulnerabilities that the tools produce. So if you can say, you know what, that vulnerability this tool reported, it's not actually a problem and all of that.
Mhm.
So now there's an emerging battle with the VEX data formats. So
Mhm.
there's a number of formats, and we'll see where it gets, which one wins.
It's like the old KCD comic that says, oh, we've got this problem with 14 formats, and then 3 months later, oh, now we have 15 formats, right? 15 standards. So, yeah,
It's a
lots of
natural
good stuff.
process.
Yeah,
As you evolve, you try different things, and then
yeah.
the best one wins.
Yeah, yeah. And just so for people who aren't aware of kind of Vex and exploitability, the concept here is right, like you might report a vulnerability that's say in a container or in an application, but you don't know actually whether that runs, whether that it is accessible to the outside, whether that could be exploited by a bad guy. Is that a fair, or how would you characterize like what exploitability means? Can you give a definition on that?
Yeah, it is about communicating additional context in terms of whether or not it's applicable. Is it
Mm-hmm.
relevant? So because the tools, they don't have the context. They
Mm-hmm.
found, and that's one of the fundamental problems with the vulnerability scanning tools. They're not smart. They're
Mm-hmm.
really primitive.
Mm-hmm.
They look at basic package metadata, and just on that, they declare whether or not there is a vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really accurate. It's been a problem in these tools or their predecessors for decades, a
Mm-hmm.
known problem and all of that. So now you kind of, people are trying to deal with it, especially on the vendor side. You're a vendor, you have containers that you provide to your users and your customers. They run a bunch of security scanners or their favorite scanner like Trivy or Gripe or Snyk or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. They produce a Christmas tree, and then there's a lot of going back and forth where
Mm-hmm.
people say, "Well, my tool says you have this vulnerability,"
Right.
and the application vendor says, "No, no, no, it's not vulnerable because X, Y, and Z." And Vex provides this way to simplify this back and forth, where you can ahead of time say, "These are the vulnerabilities you may discover." And these are the vulnerabilities that are not relevant, and these are the vulnerabilities you care about.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So it's actually like kind of a communication tool between kind of a consumer and a producer of a container, that just allows them to sort of have a more constructive conversation around what's in this container, what's vulnerable, what do I need to be worried about. Um,
Yeah, it adds structure and makes it less chaotic.
Cool, cool. But it's also fairly new, as you said, so kind of a long way to go on actually operationalizing and all of that. Right. Awesome. As you were talking, one thing occurred to me, which is like you talked about kind of KubeCon in 2016, and I have to imagine that KubeCon in 2016 was like a lot of kind of DevOps and kind of SRE people who are working in Kubernetes, people working in containers. Then now KubeCon has like really taken on a developer focus, and now security is shifting to developers. So kind of Lindsay, you're sitting on the show floor. I'm kind of curious. Have you seen like has it been predominantly developers? Are you seeing mostly security people at Cloud Native Security Con? Is it kind of this DevSecOps role? Like who are the people that you're talking to? Like what do they do for work and what's their interest in Cloud Native Security?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been a good mix. I think there's still a lot of developers here because, as you said, I think that problem is kind of shifting to their desks if it hasn't already. So we're seeing a lot of folks that are kind of in that software engineer role that are coming through and looking for these solutions. But there are, still plenty of security leaders and CTOs that are coming through as well, just kind of seeing what the latest trends are and solves for some of these problems.
Cool, cool. So it's sort of a holistic approach. The entire organization is thinking about cloud native security these days, and you have to, given the state of supply chain security. Um, I know, Lindsay, you caught a couple of the keynote talks. What resonated to you from the keynotes that they had today?
Yeah, I think my favorite one was kind of a predictions talk, and it came from Snyk based on what they think maybe coming this year for security trends and how to solve. So the three big takeaways there were looking into keys, signing, specifically artifact signing, and then
Mhm.
certificates as well. So
Sure.
I know we talked about the SBOM buzzword, which is definitely still floating around and on everyone's mind, but it was interesting to see some of these other solves and kind of solutions to look into as well.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, definitely signing a hot topic. Certificate's always a hot topic. Yeah, and Sneak really like leading the developer first charge here in security. So good to see them on stage. And Eric Smalling, who we've had on this stream before, obviously, I saw he was giving a talk there as well. If people are just joining, or if you haven't seen the stream before, we're Slim.AI. We're a cloud native security company. We focus on container security and container optimization. You can go to Slim.AI, this URL above my head if you want to learn more. There's a link to our Discord. It's also in the chat here. So if you want to jump into Discord, join our community, ask questions, find out what we're all about, please do. And if you have questions for Kyle, who is our CTO and co-founder and the founder of the Slim Toolkit open source project, which is a very popular way of securing your containers. If you have questions for Kyle, questions for Lindsay, who runs our growth marketing side of the house, please post them in chat or just post in chat and say hi. We're a friendly group. We love to hear from people. So, Kyle, I know you've been running around a lot. Have you had a chance to see any talks yet, or what talks are you interested in while you're there?
So there's a bunch of talks, and most of them are very interesting, and it's physically impossible to see them all. And like I said, there are a lot of talks on the defense side and on the offense side, runtime security, static security. I like hands-on kind of talks. For example, today there's a tutorial talk about building a Kubernetes admission controller. This is
Okay.
kind of on the security control side. Then a tutorial on hands-on hacking Kubernetes.
Okay.
That's interesting. So those are good, and given the audience, it's kind of good to expose developers to what the security people do, hacking Kubernetes, and then exposing security engineers to what developers do, building admission controllers and all of that. So you're merging security and application development, and that's one of those holy grails that you want to get to in general. It's been a holy grail for decades because one of the traditional problems with security is that the traditional tools are bolt-on security, provide bolt-on security. What does it mean? You have your application or whatever you need to secure, and then you add your security tools on top of that. So that's called bolt-on security, and it's not the best way to secure things because there are a lot of problems there, and it can be a separate session just on that. The best way to secure your applications is from the inside. So you need to bring the security practitioners and developers together, and that's why this kind of mixing together opportunities is great, where security engineers get to learn how to develop more, and developers learn more about security, defensive and offensive security. Yesterday, one of the interesting talks it was about you mentioned eBPF, was about eBPF finding. It's called finding the needles in a haystack, identifying suspicious behaviors with eBPF. A talk by Amazon Web Services, and how they're using eBPF to monitor their lambdas and other infrastructure they have. And that's one of the other trends that started, I'd say, a couple of years ago around continuous observability and the security use cases related to that, where you can leverage these new tools, system-level observability tools, to continue to observe what's happening, and it gets applied in a number of different domains, including security. So that's interesting to see how Amazon is using it to help them secure their environment.
Yeah, that's cool. And so just for people who might not know, like eBPF, Berkeley packet filter, right? Can you explain like a layman's definition of eBPF and how it compares to maybe some other tools people might know?
So it started back in the day. It used to be just BPF, and that was Berkeley packet filter, and literally it was about filtering packets. So you had these network monitoring tools, TCP dump and others that you would use if you're a network engineer or a security engineer. You would use them to monitor what's going on the network. You put the network card in a promiscuous mode, and then you suck in all of the packets from it, and then you use BPF to filter the data, so you only see the data that you want to
Hmm.
see, you cared about, for example, HTTP traffic only.
Okay.
And then later on, and they decided, okay, we like the concept, but let's apply that at the system level for everything. And that's where the E comes from, extended BPF.
Okay.
And now the original BPF became a C BPF, classic BPF. So there they used the same concept with eBPF, where they have these points in the system, in the kernel, that you can um, add monitors to see what's going on in the system. You can do that with the user space code as well. So it's just a way to add your hooks to the system in the kernel and user space, and then to see what it's doing, to observe what's going on. And a lot of continuous monitoring tools and
Yeah.
continuous profiling tools are using it just because of that. One of the great benefits there is that the performance is low, so you can use it in
Mhm.
production. So you can see what's going on in the system, and without a high performance penalty like you have to deal with other observability tools that
Yeah.
debuggers use, for example.
Yep, yep, that makes sense. And yeah, I know we've seen a lot from Isovalent and Solo.io are big into that space. So it's pretty interesting new technology. I won't ask you whether Slim is going to get involved in that space and ask you to divulge any trade secrets for us, but cool to hear about. I've always wanted to get a primer on eBPF. Um,
And one of the new trends there is to, like, the next step is not only visibility but control. So there
mhm,
are related tools and capabilities where you can actually control what happens in the kernel, where you decide, oh, I see something, and now I can either allow it or disallow it. So
mhm.
this is a newer emerging kind of direction related
Okay.
to eBPF. That
Oh,
goes beyond visibility.
okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, just kind of going back to what you were talking about before with the hands-on Kubernetes hacking. I feel like every time you were talking about kind of moving that security towards the developers, obviously making sure security people know what developers are doing. But I think a lot of developers maybe like look at Kubernetes and they're like, okay, that's so far downstream, I don't really need to think about it. And what maybe they don't realize is actually like the configurations that they're making in their containers are actually going to impact their security in Kubernetes. And I'm thinking of one example I saw at a similar conference at Cloud Native Rejects where they were using a shell. They get access to a container, they use a shell then to pull in some malicious code and then jump around, inside the Kubernetes pod and just kind of wreak havoc. So I think your position for a long time and why you developed Slim Toolkit, part of what we're doing at Slim.AI is to remove a lot of that attack surface. Do you think, are you going into these talks like to hands-on Kubernetes hacking with this kind of barometer for like, okay, does Slim solve this problem or not? And how do you think about that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like you said, the applications themselves, they are an attack vector that malicious actors will try to exploit. And it's not just the application; it's everything that you have in the container,
Mm-hmm.
and that will be used for what's called lateral movement, where
Mm-hmm.
you exploit the application and then you try to move one way or the other way in the environment, where you might try to break out of the containers, you might try to interact with the Kubernetes runtime, get privileged information, tokens, credentials that allow you to move to another part of the cluster. So uh, one of the uh, one of the reasons behind the concept uh, with the Slim toolkit and Docker Slim when it was created, it was the concept of proactive security. So as opposed to, if you look at vulnerability scanners in general, what is it? It's an example of a reactive security control.
Mm-hmm.
Security scanners tell you if you have any known vulnerabilities. They don't tell
Right.
you unknown vulnerabilities by definition. It's not their job. They're good at that job, but it's a reactive security control because it's an after effect kind of thing where they just tell you what exists. And it's a good tool, but you also want to provide um, and leverage more proactive controls when possible. And when you remove the stuff that your application doesn't need, that's what you get. Not only do you remove the known vulnerabilities, but potentially you remove unknown vulnerabilities that will be discovered later proactively, not waiting until it is discovered and then removing. But what it also provides, it removes the plumbing and the infrastructure used by attackers to move laterally in your
Mhm.
environment. So now the exploit that used to work no longer works because it doesn't have access to the components it needs to execute the next step. And that was one of the original goals to kind of provide that capability. And yes, whenever I still watch the talks about different attack techniques, I ask myself, how does it work when you don't have any of the extra components in the system? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How is it going to break?
Cool. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I was actually reading your example on OpenSSL for distroless containers. You can find it on the Slim Toolkit Twitter feed. Kyle posted it, so just go on Twitter and look up Slim Toolkit, and you can find that example. It's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool read. It's just cool to see how it all works, and it's very like visceral example. Everybody knows OpenSSL, and it's everywhere. So
Yeah, it's a nice example, but same images, they don't have a shell, right? That's
mhm.
great. So attackers cannot use the shell, but they have OpenSSL that can be used like a shell.
Mm.
And that example shows how with slimming you remove that vector as well.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. Well, I know you guys are on conference Wi-Fi, so I won't ask too much more. Lindsay, I know that you are doing a bit of a road show for us. So, Cloud Native Security Now, what's next for you? Where are you heading?
Yeah, so we're in Seattle this week. Next week we'll be at Civo Navigate for the first time. So that's taking place in Tampa the 7th and 8th next week. And Aisha, our head of data and insights, will actually have a talk there. So after that, we'll have a little break in March and then pick back up in April with KubeCon EU and RSA. Keep your eyes on that speaker lineup too. We're hoping to get there. So yeah, we'll have a little busy spring coming up.
Okay, very awesome. And yeah, I think we might have a few free, I don't want to speak out of school here, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we might have a few free Civo Navigate virtual passes left. So if people are interested, again, come to Slim.AI, jump into our Discord, and ping us, say hi, say, want to learn more about Civo Navigate, and we'll see if we can hook you up while supplies last, right? So perfect. Awesome. And Kyle, what are you up to next? What's I think you're back home for you're in your backyard right now. You live
I
close by
live
there,
here,
so
so
yeah,
like it was a 20-minute drive
nice.
for me. Yeah, lots of new stuff with open source.
Okay, cool. So Slim Toolkit, check that out in the Docker, in the GitHub repo, github.com/Slim Toolkit. And Kyle's got a bunch of other fun projects coming up, so we'll look forward to seeing those, and we'll get you both back on stream here with us very shortly. But yeah, thanks for carving some time out of the conference to join and braving the conference Wi-Fi and my streaming setup and audio issues that come along with that. So thanks very much, and yeah, we will talk to you soon. So.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks all.